Good evening, everyone. I'm calling this meeting of the Charlottesville City Council to order. Mayor Walker is currently leading a delegation to Charlottesville sister city and Winneba, Ghana. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next order of business is the roll call. Ms. Rice?
Dr. Bellamy?
Present.
Ms. Hill?
Here.
Mr. Signer? Here. Ms. Galvin?
Here, though I'm barely above the table.
And Ms. Walker?
Before we get started, just wanted to make note for anyone who might have looked at the agenda prior to the afternoon on Friday, February. We have removed what was originally item number 4, which is 901 River Road Special Use Permit. And then today, because of some unplanned circumstances, the SPCA annual report will not be at the end of the agenda. We'll be pushing that to another date. I believe we have a couple proclamations. Would you like to start, Ms. Galvin, or want me to start?
Sure. Thank you. Is Carl Schwartz here? Oh, great. So it is with great pleasure that I read this proclamation about May being Bike Month. Whereas bicycling is a healthy, clean, efficient, and affordable mode of transportation and recreation used by thousands of citizens and residents of all ages throughout our great Commonwealth and city, whereas commuting by bicycle helps alleviate traffic congestion and reduce pollution associated with vehicular travel and other significant mental and physical health benefits to bicyclists themselves. Yes, we can attest to that. Whereas our Commonwealth is the host to many bicycling events, including competitive races, sightseeing tours, charitable fundraisers, and recreational rides, which in total create a very real economic impact. And whereas Charlottesville has been named a silver-level bicycle-friendly community by the League of American Bicyclists, and in the effort to improve upon this designation, will continue to recognize the importance of bicycling in urban and community planning and development. And whereas Bike Month allows bicyclists to increase awareness of their mode, emphasizing proper safety precautions for bicyclists and motorists while sharing our roadways, and to promote the benefits of bicycling through organized activities such as Bike to School Day and Bike to Work Day. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the members of City Council hereby recognize the month of May 2018 as National Bike Month, encourage all who support bicycling to participate in the events planned, and urge all road users to share the road safely. Signed and sealed this 7th day of May 2018 by Heather Hill, Vice Mayor, City of Charlottesville. So, Mr. Schwartz?
So yes, as Councilor Gavin said, May is Bike Month, and the Charlottesville Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee has we have a brand new Facebook page. You can find it by searching for Charlottesville BPAC on Facebook, and we've got all the events posted on there, so you can find out more about all the mini events. There's also this flyer up here that has them all, so any speakers if they're curious. And we're always looking for new members for a Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. We meet the first Thursday of every month, and yeah, it's a great way to provide input on any problems that you have as far as biking and walking throughout town.
Thank you. And if I may recognize Amanda Ponce, our Bike Ped coordinator. None of this would have happened. We wouldn't have achieved anything that we've achieved without Ms. Ponce, so thank you very much. And the Bike Ped Advisory Committee.
And we have one more proclamation. Molly Yates here to receive. Okay. And what is your name? Rebecca Kendall. This is in recognition of Mental Health Awareness Month. Whereas mental health is essential to everyone's overall health and well-being, and whereas mental illnesses are real and prevalent in our nation, and half of us will have a mental health diagnosis at some point in our lives, and whereas everyone experiences times of difficulty and stress in their lives and should feel comfortable in seeking help and support to manage these times, And whereas engaging in prevention, early identification, and early intervention are as effective at reducing the burden of mental illnesses as they are at reducing the burden of other chronic health conditions. And whereas the effective treatment, all individuals with mental illness, even serious mental illness, can make progress towards recovery and lead full, productive lives. Whereas jails and prisons have often become the default places of custodial care for even nonviolent people with serious mental illnesses. And whereas each business, school, government agency, healthcare provider, organization, and citizen has a responsibility to promote mental health and well-being for all. Now, therefore, I, Heather Hill, Vice Mayor, City of Charlottesville, do hereby proclaim May 2018 as Mental Health Month in the City of Charlottesville. I also call upon the citizens, government agencies, public and private institutions, businesses, and schools in Charlottesville to recommit our community to increasing awareness and understanding of mental health and to the steps our citizens can take to protect their mental health. Signed and sealed the 7th day of May, 2018.
Thank you for taking this moment to recognize Mental Health Awareness Month, and it's an issue that is touching all of us in this community at this time, and so I really applaud just opening the conversation about Mental Health Awareness Month. The Community Mental Health and Wellness Coalition is a coalition of the safety net behavioral health providers in the community, and we have an important, you can follow us on Facebook to find out more about our events this month. We'll be doing training coming up in June on helping communities respond to community traumatic events, and so that information will be posted on our Facebook page. That'll be June 18th, 19th, and 20th, and we invite community leaders, clergy, counselors, lay leaders to join us and check out the training. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your support of the therapeutic docket, which is now up and running, and we're hoping that it will divert people from the jail and save money. It's going well. Thank you.
Thank you. I invite Mr. Jones to deliver the city manager response to community matters from the April 16th council meeting.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Walker. Hill, I'm sorry, Vice Mayor Hill. Several items from the last meeting in April. Ms. Mary Carey raised concerns about an obstruction at the corner of First Street and Elliott Avenue that's impeding the sight of drivers trying to turn onto Elliott. Representatives from Neighborhood Development Services have inspected the site, and they are taking steps with the property owner to have that addressed. Ms. Kathleen Meyer was concerned about a possible land swap between the city and developers of a new residential housing complex on Douglas Avenue. Ms. Galvin added that a charrette was to be held if the land swap was a possibility. That was a discussion that had taken place many months ago with the developer and the city. There are no current discussions taking place concerning that piece of property that the city owns beside Belmont Lofts and the developer of that project. They have submitted a site plan that does not include the city parcel. So just wanted to provide an update on that. And Ms. Rosia Parker raised the issue of pedestrian safety on West Main Street near 8th Street. This was an issue that was raised several years ago, and we added curb extensions there at 8th Street on West Main to allow for the traffic, the 8th Street traffic to move up a little bit, have a better sight distance, and it also shortened the amount of time that it would take for pedestrians to cross West Main Street there. So that was one step that we had taken. We will have some discussions with the 10th and Page Street Neighborhood Association to discuss whether or not there's anything else that we could do to try to address the issues there. Putting a traffic signal has historically not been something that we're able to do there because of the short sight distance as you're coming over the bridge.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right, next we move on to community matters. This evening we have 13 who have signed up, and 8 that signed up in advance, and 5 this evening. Each person will have 3 minutes to speak, followed by an optional 2 minutes for council to respond. We ask that you begin by sharing your name and address. The first speaker is Joan Fenton.
Good evening, I'm Joan Fenton, I live in the county.
Good evening.
Hi there. I just wanted to address, I think many of you are aware that Second Street, there was a permit to close it for a month in April because a contractor wanted to redo a roof. After the neighbors complained, the contractor was able to get by with only 4 parking spots reserved for the entire month. And I'd really like to ask you, and I know there's discussions going on, but I think council needs to come up with a written policy so that staff knows what the guidelines are for when you close a street, when you don't close a street. We have a lot of construction coming up, and I think it doesn't matter if it's a residential or commercial neighborhood. If there's going to be something that impacts people, there should be some input first, and there should really be specific guidelines so that it's not arbitrarily, because the way it works right now, if I want a parking spot, I could reserve it for a month for $20 every day, and there would be nothing to stop me. I could have it 24 hours a day, and I could close the street if I talk somebody into giving me the permit. So I'd just like to really think if we could have something happen soon before all the construction starts. And in the Parking Advisory Committee, we've been looking at those signs for reserving parking spots when somebody reserves them, to try to limit the times, and again, to try to have guidelines. So I'd just like to see if we could address that sooner than later. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Hill, if I may, I believe we're going to be discussing this
On May 21st.
on May 21st. So,
That issue and others as well.
and that, and others related to the impact of construction on our public streets. And that you've made that point very clearly and very well in one of your emails too. So it's great to get this on the public record again. Thank you.
Evan Brown?
Yes, Evan Brown, live in the city. Yeah, so I'll try to be slightly brief. So sales, at least I could see from what's publicly available, were up 4.78% in Charlottesville in February. That seems to be the most monthly data. Seems like the businesses are doing pretty well. They've been up at least 4 consecutive months since November. Yet this increase was before you all approved the $75,000 to DBAC, the Downtown Business Association, and it clearly seems like they don't need it. When we still have people in this community still suffering from the events of this summer, still need to pay their medical bills, still are behind on rent, suffering from mental illness, it's appropriate, that's Mental Illness Awareness Month. And I wanted to ask you all, has the city even given any money to any victims of Charlottesville or to any of the funds? Because I don't know. I'm asking you sincerely. I don't know if the city has contributed any funds. And if you have, that's fantastic. But if you're going to go ahead and toss $75,000 at someone, it should be to an organization that's actually here to heal people who are still suffering and need this money, rather than these fucking businesses. Okay? And if you have donated some money, like I said, that's great. And if not, why are we still talking about this? Why haven't you given any money? So I just would like to know if you all have donated, has the city given any money to any funds that have gone directly to victims from the events of this summer? And if you have, will you consider donating more money? Because these people are still suffering. We are still suffering.
So we want to offer a response. Question?
Is there a response?
Okay. So could we have Mr. Jones, is there any answer from the city?
Any funds that would have been given to any organization would have come through city council. That has not happened.
You haven't?
Hold on. So I know that, Ms. Hill, Mayor?
Yes.
So I know that there's been a couple of funds that have currently been working with individuals who were hurt. The Unity Seville Fund, as well as the fund through the university. Ms. Gretchen Ellis, through Human Services, has had conversations with the state in regards to the state release fund, so I know there's been a great deal of talk there. I literally just had some talks with some people a couple weeks ago about funds being allocated to address not only physical therapy, but individuals being able to go take advantage of going to counseling for mental health issues and whatnot. It was my understanding that those monies were being allocated to everyone that was in need, and if they called the hotline, they were getting what they needed from both local and state. Is that not what you've been hearing?
That's not what I've been hearing.
And I'm
I know of one victim who's spoken to you directly.
Yeah, the people who I've spoken to, they've told me that they've spoken to those individuals.
Right, but they've also said that they're not getting all of their needs met.
Right, and then there was a follow-up conversation, and then the individual who's representing the funds told me that funds were then being allocated. And I haven't heard anything else from anyone else, which was telling, or it meant to me, that the problem was being solved. And you're saying that's not the case?
It's not the case.
Okay, so is it possible for us to have a follow-up conversation after this?
Anything that's on public record is on public record. If there's not effort for the city to make funds available to victims, to
microphone, please. People at home
Well, she-
can hear, I can't hear.
She doesn't have to
I'm
if she
not
wants
very interested
to.
in an off-the-record conversation.
Not interested in off-the-record conversation?
No.
Yeah. No, I'm just
Well,
making it
don't
known
seem
so
to be
people can
getting
hear
us
it.
anywhere. The fact that this council hasn't, to date, considered this a useful way to spend city money is shocking, though it shouldn't be.
I don't
but-
think it's been a situation or issue in which
I mean,
we felt the funds weren't useful. At least personally,
No one's given us a proposal.
we haven't gotten a proposal or request, and we just went through a whole budget season with a lot of nonprofits who got money from us, and we have Region 10, and we have a lot, and so it's not, we always work, I mean, Mr. Jones, we have a professional staff, but correct me, but we work from proposals that council receives, so, we just went through a budget season, and we could entertain proposals now. We need to get specific proposals. That's how the system works. And
But there's,
petitions, proposals, however you would define it, but there needs to be a request from parties. I mean, that's how that's how the process.
And we would have to work through an organization.
Right.
in my
Right, that's
understanding, that after the events of the summer, a number of nonprofits, and I thought the Community Foundation also, 'cause I know as individuals, some of us contributed in that way, and I thought that those were community efforts that were driven. That was the direction that was given to go in terms of fundraising.
There were several GoFundMe accounts that were open as well to help provide assistance.
I think the question is then
Well, who will we give
those
the money
funds go
to?
towards.
There are a number of organizations.
So that's what we're.
Are you just
Mayor-
waiting for people to sue you individually? Is that how you're gonna take it out?
So what? That
Vice
I'm
Mayor,
trying to figure out where would the
Hill, I think
get
we need
us
to
if you
follow some
sued
of
us.
the protocols.
Yes, we need to move on. I'm sorry. The next,
Whoa, no. Well, that's not quite. But
I'm just trying to keep us in terms of the, I agree that's something we need to have further conversation on. I think there's an agreement from council that we do need to move on.
Yeah, but I thought that was the point of us having this kind of town hall community gather style for us to be able to answer the question.
I agree. I think we've just been it's been 6 minutes.
Okay.
And
Okay.
yeah, and Vice Mayor Hill and colleagues, the procedures we follow is that we are given proposals from members of the community off budget cycle. There's a procedure. We've never received one.
So y'all
And
I
so
think
that's how we follow procedures.
No, hold on. So, Ms. Galvin, I understand wholeheartedly where you're coming from. I think where the disconnect is that what some of the members of the public are saying is that they were under the assumption that we did give money to a variety of these organizations. We may be thinking, or in my opinion, I'm thinking, well, which organization? So I think that's where the disconnect, and this may be an opportunity for us to kind of close that loop. Because if there are organizations who they would suggest, maybe we can talk about, well, how do we get them to provide a proposal? I'm not sure which one you just said it, but we do provide off-cycle, we fund off-cycle stuff all the time. But we don't know which organizations are you all specifically working with that would provide help, and maybe.
Usually it's CACHF, Charlottesville Resiliency Fund.
Okay. So, all right. So maybe we can have the conversation about them creating a proposal, and present that to council.
Yep, that's fine.
yeah.
Problem solved.
Diane Brown Towns.
Good evening, Council.
Good evening.
I am not exactly sure of the order of business. Just here to ask that you consider that the county residents be able to have an option to rename Emancipation Park. I grew up in the city, grew up on 9th and Page, went to the Charlottesville Public Schools. I'm a child of the city, and I've only lived in the county maybe since the last decade. I have roots in both the city and county, and I've worked very hard with the University of Virginia on the memorial to enslaved laborers, out there advocating the design of the memorial to enslaved laborers. And with the conflict with all of the Lee statue and that narrative about the memorial to enslaved laborers, trying to engage both communities to be involved, I just feel that sometimes we don't think about the future and how that may impact leaving the county residents out. I feel so connected to Charlottesville, and I would just like to be able to have that option of just being able to answer the survey. That's all I'm saying. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mayor Hill and Mr. Jones, I thought the county residents could participate in the survey.
No, the council said no to that.
Okay, I got confused between the Civilian Review Board and, I know
No.
that's not city, that's not county.
Right, we had a long discussion about this when we talked
Okay.
about the survey.
Oh, this is okay.
The last version.
That's
The
for the
last,
survey.
the
This
is
last
the first
version.
round.
The first round, we
Everyone.
did include.
Yes,
everyone,
first
yes.
round was open.
And ma'am, there was some debate on that on council, and there was kind of there was a division of opinion, and it's.
We don't want to act on fear. We want to be
Yeah.
Ms. Towns still has a minute left if she wanted to say what her suggestion was for the name, but it wouldn't be recorded in the survey, so.
I don't want to air my personal opinion here. I mean, if I had my way, I would name it Drury Brown Park, because Mr. Brown, he had such an impact on so many youth. We would have been unemployed youth had it not been for him. And he did so much to change, to make the community, to make us matter, the African-American students and youth matter. I mean, that's my personal feeling, but, I don't want to.
For those at home who didn't hear, our suggestion was naming the park Drury Brown Park because of the impact that he's had to several members of the community, throughout the community. Right.
I would say after the test case kids, we were the kids that made integration happen at Jefferson Schools. That's my time. That's my time. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bill Emery?
Mayor Hill, councilors, my name is Bill Emery. I live at 1604 East Market Street in the city. Sorry to be reading from a script. The small area planning process examines an area holistically with the full engagement of the public, elected and appointed officials, and planning professionals. Plans developed to guide growth, and the probability of successful outcomes is increased. Later tonight, there's a report on the 29 hydraulic small area plan and 2 related resolutions. I don't know the details, but I'm heartened to see that a multi-jurisdictional land use transportation challenge affecting a cast of thousands can be addressed in such short order. In 2013, the Charlottesville Comprehensive Plan listed 12 Charlottesville areas that are in need of small area plans. I wonder if the rapid completion of the hydraulic 29 small area plan bodes well for these other Charlottesville places. There's business on the Planning Commission's agenda tomorrow evening, ZM 1802, a rezoning request which could have massively benefited from the timely completion of a small area plan. A plan which would inform the commissioners in their discussion and recommendation to you. A plan to cover this area was requested from the city in 1988, 30 years ago, but was never formulated. The planning commissioners will have to do their best without the benefit of the requested plan to arrive at the destination that being a well-formed neighborhood, a livable place with housing, good jobs, mobility for walkers and cyclists, and cultural and commercial amenities. Planning Commission will strive to get there without the help of the SAP process, without meaningful community involvement, without all the information that should have been available to them. We must reform our zoning and undertake long-range planning efforts for the community in a more timely fashion. I think you all approved a new assistant city manager to coordinate such efforts. Has this position been filled? Is the code audit nearing completion? There's a fire hose of development money directed at our city. How will our businesses, our neighborhoods, and our residents fare if we continue to play whack-a-mole as the crises pop up? The SAP plans, the plannings are the rewritten code. We need these tools. I wish we had them in hand. Thank you.
Thank you.
Keith Smith.
Bless you.
Mr. Smith?
Yes, I am. My name is Keith Smith. Hello, council members. I'm representing the Land Trust Community, Thomas Jefferson Community Land Trust today, and my purpose today is simply to say thank you. This council gave us a rather generous grant about a year ago, and I wanted to publicly say thank you. My board wanted to publicly say thank you and share some update information. We are going to be starting construction within the next couple of weeks, and we will be moving 4 affordable housing buyers into homes at the end of late fall, depending how the contractors go. But what the most exciting part I wanted to share with you is between some partnerships that we did between the public-private world, we're able to put solar on these 4 units. So these 4 homes are going to be true net zero homes. And these 4 affordable housing buyers will have 0 utility costs to it. So I simply just want to take a moment and say thank you. You guys are visionaries. Thank you so much for what you've done for us. And we will come back periodically and give you some updates. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Paul Long?
Vice Mayor Hill and members of the City Council. My name is Paul Long, and I live at 100 Ridge Street here in the city. And the reason I'm coming to speak to the council tonight is that there was a public hearing sponsored by the Charlesville Area Transit at City Space where a proposal for a variety of bus routes was made. And several of them I object to strenuously. One of them is that they proposed that the free trolley not go down First Street down to Market Street, and to be rerouted to McIntyre Road. And I object to that because that stop, they let people off right at the downtown mall, right across the street from the Violent Crown movie theater. And I think that there should be public bus service to let people come to the downtown mall to shop and to go to movies, particularly in light of the supposed decline in business in the downtown mall. The other objection that I have is that the Route 7 bus, it seems that CAT wants to reroute the Route 7 as much as possible away from Route 29. And they're also going to eliminate the stop at the main post office. And I have a problem with that. Route 29 is one of the main commercial streets in the city and the county, and there should be access for people to be able to get there to a variety of sites on Route 29. I also have a problem with the decline in service. A lot of this has happened in the past couple of years. CAD has, there used to be a time when there was a bus stop every block, and now a lot of times there's 4 or 5 blocks in between bus stops. That makes it very difficult for children and the elderly and for people with physical disability to access buses. And if you're going to have an adequate bus service, the routes should be very frequent, the stops should be frequent, so people can get to it. And I want to make a comment. I moved here in February of '98. There's been a lot of development since then. There's a lot of development going on in downtown, West Main Street, and an awful lot of residential development in Albemarle County. And Charlottesville is not a small college town anymore. I've seen that change in the last 20 years. It's not the Charlottesville of 40 years ago. And I know that there's at least 2 members of City Council who've come from big urban areas. Mr. Signa, you're one from Northern Virginia, and Mr. Bellamy coming from Atlanta. The metropolitan area of just Albemarle County and the city is approaching 200,000. That's not including the other counties. We need a much more extensive public transportation system. This growth is going to continue, and the people are spending millions of dollars developing new roads. I'm thinking the project with Hydraulic Road and 29. Some of that money needs to be redeployed to public transportation, and the system's got to be a lot better than it is now. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Mr. Long, could you stay for a second? Councilor Galvin, you and Mayor Walker attended the bus transit meeting. She was telling me something about the fact and.
Both Mayor Walker and I are on the Regional Transit Partnership, and the very issues that you're talking about, increasing frequency, is a very big issue for the Regional Partnership, and involves Jaunt, CAT, the Charlottesville Area Transit, and the University Transit System. So we're all at the same table. We're going to be going on a more kind of robust retreat with a group called Jared Walker's firm from Richmond, who will be giving us much more insight as to how you move forward to getting the high frequency system. Right now there's a challenge because it's kind of a chicken egg, that we have low ridership, so they think, well, we don't need so many stops, but then as you absolutely say, that means many people aren't able to get to those stops. We need both more stops and high frequency, and there's a tension with that. Now, if I may, and I also would kind of speak to Mr. Emery's comment as well, if I may, Vice Mayor Hill. You're absolutely right. We're growing, and we need to get into a pattern of development that facilitates this transit stop system. And on US 29, we're doing that with the hydraulic small area plan, and the county's doing the RIO small area plan. That's really good news, because that means high efficiency public transit on 29. We do need to apply those same principles in all of our small area plans that Mr. Emery was talking about. We are still indulging in very low density, autocentric sprawl, even inside the city. And that's not getting us the ridership we need, that gives us the kind of frequency that you and I both know we need, which we should be getting to 15-minute headways, not an hour.
Public transit has never paid for itself. You know, you go to Atlanta, you go to New York City, Philadelphia, San Francisco. Public transportation has never paid for itself. It takes state and local governments to put a lot of money into that to make it work. But I'm going to go to the opposite direction. I'm saying that if you have an extensive public transportation system that services the entire area, you have buses running every 20 minutes, so that a person who wants to go to work and take the bus misses the bus. If they got to wait an hour, they're going to jump into their car to get to work. If they only have a 20-minute wait, they may consider waiting at the corner for the next bus to come along.
Thank you,
I'm
Mr.
saying
Long.
that if you have an extensive public transportation system that runs frequently, the ridership is going to go up. Thank you.
Mayor, I'm sorry, Vice Mayor Hill. One quick question. Mr. Jones, is it possible for us to maybe get another report from Mr. Jones from CAT to talk about or have an explanation in terms to the public about why some routes may be being cut? I was told by Mayor Walker that Ms. Galvin spoke at length during their meeting about the need for these routes, which go predominantly through low-income neighborhoods, are being cut, and you she was adamant that you were holding them to the fire, and I don't know quite what came of that, but maybe Jawan could, what's Jawan's last name?
Lee.
Mr. Lee could possibly come and provide us some context, or
Yeah, I think the items, route changes are being proposed for public comment. And
for public
input.
comment.
Yeah.
Gotcha,
And so,
input.
and then those will be brought back, they won't be put into play until we have a chance to air them with city council. And so there may be changes between the time that public comment is received and the time it comes to the city council for discussion. So, and then that will be an opportunity for council to weigh in on those changes.
But
too.
that date hasn't been set yet, correct?
No.
And-
But it will probably happen soon.
So Mr. Long?
That will bring it back to council for discussion.
And again, to just follow up, what Mr. Bellamy was saying is that the city council's representatives on the regional transit partnership have made it very clear that we do not appreciate the stopping, the cessation of certain routes
Right.
that were being proposed as part of this 3-year transit plan that they're required to put together by federal transportation agencies. And so there will absolutely be a cost to that, but know that we definitely don't want to deny service to people because of a technical assessment of what high efficiency means.
Right.
So I guess that's the best way to explain it right now.
And this is a normal part of the process, to have discussion with the public, get feedback from them, and then to adjust the plan as you go through
Yes.
it. So.
All right, we'll move on to our next speaker.
Thank you, Ms. Galvin.
Emily Gorczynski.
I'll start my time today by asking leave in advance if I run over my time. Tonight's the last time that I will be addressing this council. And it will be my last time because I find myself in a position necessary to leave this city, and indeed this country, for my safety. An act made necessary by the repeated dereliction of duty of this community's stewards to keep this community safe. When I addressed this council last July, I warned of the violent threats to this community at Unite the Right. In one of those threats, an internet poster said that the Nazis needed to get some, quote, military guys to, quote, crack some skulls. Last week, ProPublica ran a story about Lance Corporal Vasilios Pistolis, an active duty United States Marine who traveled to Charlottesville, committed several acts of violence, and then bragged online about how he cracked 3 skulls without damage to himself, and bragged about how he attacked me personally, referencing me multiple times by name. I helped research that ProPublica story, just like I helped research an Al Jazeera story where I exposed U.S. Marine Sergeant Michael Chesney, also known as Tyrone, who helped plan Unite the Right with Jason Kessler and was in contact with Jason Kessler and deliberately and purposefully plotted a vehicle attack exactly like the one that killed Heather Heyer in August. Everything we warned you about came true. Just before I came into this meeting, I got off the phone with the office of Representative Keith Ellison, who is a U.S. congressman from Minnesota, who has asked the Secretary of Defense to investigate the domestic extremism within the ranks of the United States military, including the terrorist attacks here in Charlottesville. It is a deep embarrassment to the city of Charlottesville, the county of Albemarle, the University of Virginia, indeed the Commonwealth itself, and all of the associated police departments and Commonwealth's attorneys' offices, that a congressman from another state has to work with the Secretary of Defense to demand answers to the violence and terrorism that we experienced in this city. I'm not here anymore to ask you, to compel you to action. I'm here because I'm owed something. Me, personally, I am owed something at this point. I am owed an apology from you. I am owed an apology because I was attacked in exactly the way that I warned you about. I am here because my wife, your coworker, Mr. Signer, is owed an apology from you because of the devastation that you have wrought upon our lives. I'm owed an apology because my friends and family have to read my name in multiple international news outlets about how I was targeted and singled out for assault by a member of a satanic neo-Nazi terror cult with sleeper agents in the U.S. military, and I wish that anything in that sentence was exaggerated. I'm owed an apology because a resident of your city stood here and begged you for help, and you did nothing. And you continue to do nothing. Thank you.
So I think with that,
Response unless the words are, I am sorry.
I am sorry.
oh, yeah.
And I just want to say that I apologize the other time when you were out of the room. We talked afterward, and I meant it. And I also want to credit you with the research that you did do and the specifics that you did find, which outstripped the research that later was done by people who managed to get in the dark net, but you did bring it to the attention here, and for whatever reason, some of which the Hayfie report did find, some of which it didn't, the authorities that needed to give us what we needed to do to meet the credible threat standard that you and I have talked about, including the state police and the Fusion Center, they didn't. And it breaks our hearts because we should have been able to foresee and get the facts about what did come, and you were right.
The city will receive my bill for $350,000. Thank you.
Extensive research.
Morgan Butler.
Good evening, Madam Vice Mayor, members
Good
of
evening.
council. My name is Morgan Butler with the Southern Environmental Law Center. Hopefully you all have had a chance to take a look at the letter that we sent you on Friday voicing our support for the hydraulic small area plan and the transportation recommendations it includes. As mentioned in that letter, SCLC has been working to improve the Route 29 corridor in Charlottesville for over 20 years. I haven't been at SCLC for that long, but I've been there long enough and I've been working on Route 29 issues long enough to say that the progress that has been made in the past few years has been truly significant. The recent transportation improvements, like Hillsdale Drive Extended, the Best Buy ramp, the Rio intersection, the synchronized traffic signals, all of these are certainly a big part of that progress, as travel times and accidents along the corridor are both down considerably since those projects were completed. But just as important is the groundwork being laid through plans like this small area plan to transform the pattern of development along the corridor into something far more accessible, equitable, and environmentally sustainable. As you certainly know, the area is dominated today by suburban-style shopping centers with large single-story buildings and massive parking lots. It's a pattern of development that requires getting into a car to do just about anything. And by doing so, it generates unnecessary traffic congestion and it creates barriers around the surrounding neighborhoods. Its inefficient use of land also leaves little space for building new housing and functional neighborhoods, which is untenable when the city is so focused on expanding housing options. As our community continues to grow in the coming years, there is so much opportunity to transform this landscape into a setting that offers a much greater variety of housing types and jobs, creates better and safer routes for walking and biking, enables effective transit service, and makes travel on the Route 29 corridor a lot smoother for everyone. But for the area around hydraulic to get there, we'll need a plan that charts the way, and we'll need investment in the transportation solutions that are still needed to bridge those divides. The small area plan and the transportation projects it recommends chart that course and help bridge those barriers. Your support of the plan and your endorsement of the transportation solutions will position the city and the larger community to take the next important step. We're not going to get there overnight, of course, but without a good map like the one before you, we may never get there at all. Thank you for the chance to comment.
Thank you. Kathleen Mayer.
Thank you. I'll speak a little quicker because I'd like to address the question of what has the city done. When I was working with the Human Rights Council right after August 12th, I know that there were members of the commission there that helped organize a GoFundMe, and they went to individuals that were in the hospital who suffered terrible losses and continue to do so, but we couldn't get their names because we wanted to follow up because of confidentiality. So I think it's important for you to understand that human rights should follow up on that. So why I'm here is I'm back with Riverbend Development and Mr. Capshaw's project. I want to thank Ms. Galvin for cycling over to Belmont to meet with us. And what we'd like to do is we really want to offer ourselves this project as a template to really understand why the city really needs an assistant city manager, because I don't know if this development is really common for you all, but it's very complex for us. And so when they sent in this, it's just really sort of a placeholder, so I don't want to get into the details. As our neighbor, who's an architect, said, if UVA received this, it would have just been rejected off-site, but here's taxpayer money, thoughtful rejections, really thinking through. And the thing is, who's organizing this? You know, Missy Creasy holds this, and what we really need, and I'm sure she has great skills and tools, but we need engineering, we need sewer, we need an incredible amount of skill and expertise. And so what we're hoping is that this project that has huge ramifications for the neighborhood corridor is the template as we're going forward, because as we're looking at social justice and we're talking about colonization and we're taking these words apart and really honestly looking at the vocabulary, this is gentrification. So it's the same thing, but it's all a little more fancy. It's the same changes. It's the same effects that are happening. So if we really want to maintain the integrity of our neighborhoods, I moved to Belmont over 16 years ago because it was diverse, and that's really changing. And so if we walk through this step by step and have a meeting, you know, we did have a meeting with the developer. It was not monitored. It was a free-for-all. There really weren't any answers. Riverbend said, we'll meet with you when we have something, and they came to our neighborhood meetings, but then all of a sudden here's this site plan that's put in because, as I said earlier, you all are doing your jobs and they're a little frightened that the zoning will get more sensible, will get more tailored to a neighborhood. So we will walk through this process with you and really help understand how do we connect the dots with the sewers, because this is going to be massive infrastructure on very old clay systems. So thank you. And thank you, Ms. Gallo.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Deborah Jackson.
Good evening, and thank you. I'm Deborah Jackson. I live next door to Kat Meyer, as a matter of fact, in Belmont. I'm here also to talk about Riverbend Development and to bring to your attention their proposed development called Belmont Lofts. It's zoned Neighborhood Commercial Corridor, NCC, and we don't believe it's in conformance with the existing Neighborhood Commercial Corridor zoning district. Riverbend has submitted a preliminary site plan to construct 138 residential units and 27,000 square feet of office, commercial, and retail space at 1005 Carlton Avenue and adjacent lots. That area of Carlton Avenue is one of the narrowest streets in Belmont. It's right where all the downtown restaurants are. And the proposed 918 additional vehicle trips per day in and out of downtown Belmont is not feasible or acceptable. That's only one of the comments you're going to hear us talking every other week about this. So what I'd like to read to you is that from the Charlottesville City Zoning Ordinances, Section 34-541, this is a mixed-use district, the intent and description. For the Neighborhood Commercial Corridor District, the intent is to establish a zoning classification for the Fontaine and Belmont commercial areas that recognize their compact nature, their pedestrian orientation, and the small neighborhood nature of the businesses. This zoning district recognizes the areas as small town center type commercial areas and provides for the ability to develop on small lots with minimal parking dependent upon pedestrian access. The regulations recognize the character of the existing area and respect that they are neighborhood commercial districts located within established residential neighborhoods. Within this district, the following streets shall have designations indicated: Bainbridge, Carlton, Douglas, Fontaine, Garden, Goodman, Hinton, Holly, Lewis, Morey, Monticello, and Walnut Street. So this is the first of many times that you will hear from us about this, and I brought copies for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Jones, can I ask a question about this? When would this matter? We've heard about it a little bit, but it has not come to. When would council have any say in this development? I don't know.
I mean, at this point, it's a by right development, but they are reviewing the site plan right now to ensure that that truly is by right. So they're going through that process right now with neighborhood development services. The NDS staff.
Okay.
That's correct.
Thank you.
It's possible that it may not come in front of us.
It's
Ever.
certainly a possibility.
Right.
And again, full disclosure, I did meet with residents of the Belmont area, especially after I was shown the site plan in question. And I fully agree with Ms. Meyer and Ms. Jackson. It does not at all appear to be in conformance with the existing zoning that we have in the books. And certainly doesn't reflect the intent. So I do think what I've seen as a staff report, there have been some really good comments, particularly from Amanda Ponce, who really identified the big problems with this site plan. But there is a lot of concern because the comprehensive plan update and one of the preliminary future land use maps that was shown actually shows transition zones as opposed to this one big blanket neighborhood commercial area right in the center of Belmont. And there is some concern that this is being put in place as a placeholder to get a vested right so that there isn't going to be any requirement on the part of the developer to adhere to the new comprehensive plan. So I wanted to get that on record. There is expressed concern about that, and it does not. It is a suburban apartment complex thrown in the middle of Belmont, not adhering to the block network, the alley network, the small lot network. It's building footprints that could look like City Walk surrounded by parking lots.
So, just a process point, like how could, if just hypothetically, if council, if that's a position that council shared, how could council involve itself in what's in a zoning and an NDS decision? I mean,
so your existing processes and procedures wouldn't allow you to get directly involved. So the Planning Commission is the city's designated agent for review of major site plans and major subdivision plats. Right. So first, as is happening now, your staff will review it, and then if it is a site plan or development plan that requires the Planning Commission's review, it will go to them for the final decision. So right now, as I understand it, everybody's in sort of information gathering mode, review of the plans by engineering, by utilities, by zoning personnel, and then a staff report will be prepared. And I'm assuming it's a major development that would go to the Planning Commission for review. And the Planning Commission will make its own assessments. They'll take into account the recommendations of the staff report, but they'll make their own assessments of zoning compliance and compliance with the various ordinances that regulate development.
okay, thanks.
Jim Chang?
Hello, members of the City Council and City Manager. My name is Jim Chang. I'm president of the Meadows Neighborhood Association, and I'm here to talk about the small area plan and the area transportation plan for the hydraulic road Route 29 intersection. And before I do that, I'd like to take an opportunity to thank Chip Royals for all of his work with the Metropolitan Planning Organization, and Kathy Galvin. And I'm amazed at how much time and effort that you put into the area plan, working with the Advisory Planning Council. And we appreciate it, and it didn't go unnoticed, so thank you. And I just wanted to basically say, unfortunately, as president, I'm not able to endorse the plan, and that's because we didn't take a vote on it. But I can say, individually, in my own capacity, that I do strongly endorse the transportation and small area plan, primarily because I believe that it makes the roadways, the major roadways, around which there are many around our neighborhood, it makes those roadways much more efficient, and I believe it will ease the congestion, and thereby cut through or reduce the cut through traffic in our neighborhood, which is good for everybody. Also, I think we're hopeful anyway, or I'm hopeful, that the small area plan will allow the commercial areas to our east rather, and north of us to develop with a sense of purpose and identity, and to give it more local character. And in talking to the members of our association, nobody objected to that idea. Generally, people were supportive of that idea, I think it's safe to say. So we're hopeful that will result in something good. I guess a couple of caveats is just that the plan isn't developed enough. I understand that they were able to flesh out the pedestrian options and accessibility out of our neighborhood to the areas surrounding us. And also there are questions about us having recreational playgrounds and other facilities like that. So I understand that has to be fleshed out. I believe the process worked in general. I appreciate everybody for listening to us, including VDOT and the Neighborhood Development Services people. And I think the result was a good one, personally. I have to say, at the last meeting that we had, before the meeting, I sent out an email letting people know of the proposals, the three options for the intersection of Hydraulic Road and 29. And I included the fact that the Planning Council had recommended option 1, which was the graded separated interchange. And basically, I got no objections. One person showed up at the meeting. I don't know what that says about my leadership, but I think ultimately there was just a lack of concern about it, whereas at the very first meeting, there were a lot of people. It was very heated. Kathy remembers that, and it reflected the level of concern. So read into it what you will, but thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Elizabeth Boyd.
I'm Elizabeth Boyd. I'm a county resident. And first off, I just want to say thank you all for your time and the time that you devoted to the city and its residents. Government's all about listening to your constituents. I feel like in your term that you've been serving, you all have been really great about that. And I would like to share my input on the Confederate statues in Charlottesville. I've been researching over the past few months. While I respect that you all have been fighting to remove the statues because you think that it's the best course of action for the city and its residents, I believe that it's an uphill battle. I've been researching this topic, and I believe that there's a better compromise, one that including factual representation in the parks to help people's interpretations of these statues. And I know this idea has been passed along several times, and this will kind of help people's interpretation. But I just want to thank you all for your time and everything that you've dedicated to this topic and issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Caleb Herndon.
I actually was here to speak about the same topic, so I just want to say thank you for your work and trying to work through these difficulties and the indifference between the public.
You can still say what you were going to say. Did she say it all for you? Or? Okay. Thank you both for coming.
Thank you.
All right, well, that concludes our community matters.
Vice Mayor Hill, may I just make one request of Mr. Emery?
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Emery, could you please send your remarks to us on council because
He just did.
you did?
He just did. Yeah.
Is that what you just gave us?
On our hot little hand.
No.
Oh.
No, you send it via
Oh,
email.
excellent. Thank you. I just want to make sure that was very well said and appreciated.
I think given the time, we'll now move on to the consent agenda. Ms. Rice, will you please read the items on this evening's consent agenda?
Item A, minutes for April 16th, 2018. Item B, an appropriation domestic violence services coordinator grant, $49,336, second of 2 readings. Item C, an appropriation funds transfer from school HVAC operations to school HVAC capital improvement program, $130,000, first of 2 readings. Item D, an appropriation funds for 2018-19 community development block grant, $389,291.49, first of 2 readings. Item E, an appropriation funds for the 2018-2019 home fund, $99,488.45, first of 2 readings. Item F, an appropriation community development block grant account amendment, reprogramming of funds for FY18 and 19, first of 2 readings. Item G, an appropriation amendment to home investment partnership account, reprogramming of funds for FY18 and 19, first of 2 readings. Item H, an appropriation state assistance and citizen donation for spay and neuter program at SPCA, $1,998.52, first of 2 readings. Item I, an appropriation internal funds transfer designated for new salt storage facilities, $300,000, first of 2 readings. Item J, a resolution for the city CRHA PHA revised scope of work for strengthening systems grant, first of 1 reading. And item K, a resolution accepting the 2017 Water Resources Protection Program Advisory Committee Annual Report, first of 1 reading.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
May I ask just one item of discussion from our colleagues, just from the city CRHA PHA revised scope of work. This was discussed at great length. It's item J on the resolution. It was discussed at great length during our CRHA meeting, which we had this past Monday. And the Housing Authority is fully behind it and also very supportive in terms of conforming in terms of however is needed in order for us to make this process work with enterprise. So I promised I would say that, so I said it.
Thank you. All right, call the vote. Motion passes 4-0.
You're voting from Heather's.
Oh, my bad.
That's okay. We know how you voted.
Yeah.
All right, we will now,
So smart.
if we can keep moving on. We will now receive a report for the 5-year consolidated plan for fiscal year 2018-19 to 22-23 and the fiscal year 2018-19 annual action plan, followed by a public hearing. I think we're going to try to aim for 30 minutes for this item. I invite Tiara Howard, who's here, the Grants Coordinator for Neighborhood Development Services, who will be presenting. Good evening, Ms. Howard.
Hello. So today, my name is Tiara Howard. I'm the Grants Coordinator in the Department of Neighborhood Development Services. And today I'm seeking approval of the 5-year consolidated plan for fiscal year 18 through fiscal year 2022 and the annual action plan for fiscal year 18-19. So just to give you some background, because I know, Heather, you're new to the process, every 5 years, the City of Charlottesville and the Regional Home Consortium assess local housing and community development needs in the region and adopt a strategic plan to meet those needs identified by the community. So the consolidated plan is designed to help the region, which includes the city, counties of Albemarle, Fluvanna, Greene, Louisa, and Nelson, assess affordable housing and community development needs and market conditions and to make data-driven, place-based investment decisions as they relate to HUD funding. So specifically, the city receives CDBG and home funds, or Community Development Block Grant and Home Investment Partnership Funds. So each year, the localities are required to complete an annual action plan as part of that consolidated plan that details goals, objectives, and specific activities to be carried out in the upcoming program year. This is the first action plan. This will be the first action plan of the new consolidated plan, and it runs through July 1, 2018 through June 30 of 2023. This document also serves as a city's application for CDBG funds, and then the TJPDC, or the Thomas Jefferson Planning District application for home funds, because they administer and manage the home funds. It is due in its final form tentatively to HUD on May 15th. However, we haven't received our allocation letter yet, so it's been postponed for now until we receive our allocation letter. So the consolidated plan goals, just to specifically talk about the consolidated plan, are responsive to the needs identified while considering the limited home and CDBG resources available to carry out work under the CONS plan and the action plan. And so I provided a handout, and I included these goals in the council memo, but they've been just tweaked a little bit to respond to the public comment period that we've been going through. So I'm going to hand these out.
Thank you.
So the table, just for the public, it outlines what the priority needs are, and then it outlines what the goals are. So briefly, I'm just going to list what the needs are: affordable housing, homelessness and risk of homelessness, infrastructure improvements and accessible neighborhood amenities, workforce development, business development, mental health and substance abuse services. And then to respond to those needs, there are 12 goals that I'm going to briefly list. Preserve existing supply of affordable housing, expand the affordable housing stock. And just briefly for those two items, when we were working on the consolidated plan, we found that there's a critical need for affordable housing for extremely low income households, those making 0 to 30% of the area median income, and then a high need for very low income households, those making 30 to 50% AMI. So both for preserve existing supply of affordable housing and expand the affordable housing stock, we found that there's a critical need for those folks and a high need for those folks. Strengthen and support home ownership for first-time home buyers is the third goal. The fourth goal is ensure housing is accessible for all residents. The fifth goal, support investments that promote sustainability, energy efficiency, and environmental stewardship. 6, support homeless and their transition to independence. Number 7, support programs that aid in increasing self-sufficiency. Number 8, enhance and improve access to neighborhood amenities and infrastructure in low to moderate income eligible neighborhoods. Number 9, support investments that aid in fair housing choice. Number 11, foster small and local business development. And number 12, support programs that provide mental health and substance abuse services. So, let me go back to my notes. So just so you all know, the draft that you have, it was the draft that was for public comment, but there is a draft that's about 192 pages long, which is this.
Thank you for sharing that.
It's still a working document, just so you know. So any comments that we received tonight, any data that council recommends to include can still be included, and it will still inform the outcomes or the goals. And let's see. Okay. So specifically for the action plan, the projects outlined in the action plan include the priority neighborhood. So for fiscal year 18-19, the priority neighborhood council allocated that the council decided that the priority neighborhood would be Belmont and Ridge Street neighborhoods. So the task force for these neighborhoods will recommend priority neighborhood improvement projects to be carried out with CDBG funds. For economic development, funds are proposed to be used to provide scholarships to assist 20 entrepreneurs to help them launch their own microenterprise by providing technical assistance. For public service programs, estimated benefits include child care scholarships for 6 to 7 families, basic literacy instruction for 20 beneficiaries, increased capacity of a coordinated entry system for homeless services, which will benefit about 27 to 28 homeless persons in one major homeowner rehab. And then there's also admin and planning to help pay for the costs that are directly related to the CDBG projects, as well as citizen participation. And then for home, these funds are proposed to fund programs that support down payment assistance for estimated 9 to 10 newly supported affordable units. As far as community engagement, I'll go back to the priority neighborhood, but I wanted to get to community engagement. We held a variety of public meetings. We did an online survey. We held 14 stakeholder discussions, and we had a public comment period that was held. A wide range of over 80 organizations were informed about the consolidated plan, and they were kept informed of public meetings. Draft reviews by email were coordinated, public notice mailings, et cetera. There was a lot of community engagement that myself and Billy did to kind of reach out and go out to the community instead of have them respond to us, which is why I attended 14 stakeholder discussions. Many representatives from the different groups that we talked to were invited to attend meetings, and we asked them for data, to send us data to include in the plan. And some people opted to participate, some didn't. But staff also coordinated with CRHA to include notices and billing inserts for residents, as well as to incorporate data from the CRHA annual plan into the consolidated plan. And in addition, for the action plan specifically, the CDBG task force reviews the RFPs, and then they provide recommendation for the action plan to Planning Commission, and then Planning Commission brings it to City Council. So for the priority neighborhood specifically, so in September of last year, so every year, just so you know, Heather, every year council sets priorities in September. And in September 18 of 2017, council designated Belmont and Ridge Street as a priority neighborhood for fiscal year 18-19. Traditionally, only one neighborhood is the priority neighborhood for a couple of years. That's how it's worked before, but it's not to say that it can't be changed. So this is new. And I'm here to ask council how they would like to decide to allocate the funds. And I provided different scenarios. So the first scenario, council could decide to fund both neighborhoods equally each year, in each fiscal year within a 3-year cycle or more years. The impact would be each neighborhood would receive about $100,000 each year for the rotation cycle. And $100,000 would not be sufficient enough to fund larger scale neighborhood projects like previous priority neighborhoods have been able to do. So neighborhoods would have to identify smaller projects to fund. The second option would be to rotate and alternate funding for each neighborhood for the first 2 years in the 3-year cycle, or you can decide to extend the funding more than 3 years. So for example, Belmont would be funded for fiscal year 18-19, Ridge Street for fiscal year 19-20, and then funding would be split between both years for fiscal year 2020-21 if council decided to keep the 3-year rotation. Just so you know, Belmont technically is the next priority neighborhood up next in the rotation. If you were to choose this option, I just wanted to add that elimination or reduction decisions at the federal level are uncertain. So one neighborhood may be impacted more than the other neighborhood each year. Council can choose to extend the funding cycle, like I expressed earlier, for each priority neighborhood. And just keep in mind that because the priority neighborhood is where we have the most CDBG funding, we have to be spending that funding to meet our spending timeline. So personally, I recommend that since Belmont is up next, that you fund Belmont with the first year and then alternate and fund Ridge Street the next year. And you can extend that for 6 years. That way each priority neighborhood has 3 years in the cycle, just like 10th and Page has had 4 years and Fifeville has had 3 years. But that's just my staff recommendation. You can also, I know Kathy sent an email about being able to make a sound decision, not knowing what the projects are. Previously or traditionally, we've had a priority neighborhood task force, and they identify the priorities, and council the year before kind of allocates the funding first, and then they're able to have autonomy on what projects they want to fund. But if you want to do it a different way and kind of have them come up with the priorities each, and then you all will still have to decide how you want to allocate the funding. So those are the options that I came up with. If there are other options that you all suggest, just let me know. And So I recommend that you all approve the 18 through 2022 consolidated plan and also the action plan per additional comments that I received tonight. And just note that any funds will not be available or eligible to be spent until HUD releases their funding allocations. And this will have no additional budgetary impact, and there are no alternatives proposed. So that's a lot of information.
Thank you, Ms. Howard.
Does council have any clarifying questions before we do the public hearing?
I have
I have a few.
clarifying question before.
And thank you, Ms. Howard. This helps getting the overview, just verbalizing it. Again, even though I've been doing this more than once, it's still a very dense document, and this is different. And it was hard to imagine how we could make this kind of a decision, picking which one goes first when we didn't know which projects had any kind of sense of urgency to them. So your recommendation just now, I'm finding extremely helpful, which is extend it to 6 years, start with Belmont first, but make sure each neighborhood gets 3 years each. I just want to say that was extremely helpful, because you were the one in the 14 stakeholder meetings, you were the one that heard what the public wanted directly, and that has a lot of credibility with me. So otherwise, I just felt like I was operating in the dark, and how to make that, weighing that discussion. Now, second, I had some of these questions that I asked, and I just wanted to know, and again, because this happens every year, but there was a certain level of detail in this one, it seemed, more than others, and I just wanted to make sure, from my own mind, was this informed by any of the work of the Partners for Economic Solutions, Anita Morrison?
Yes, a lot of the data in the needs assessment came from the...
Anita, but we will be discussing Ms. Morrison's study independent of this, correct, Mr. Jones?
Correct. Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
that's all I wanted to know on that one, because I wanted to just know we had another bite at that apple to talk at length about that. And the other thing that I saw that the CRHA's waiting list is 1,651, was like when you got rid of all the duplication. And is there any way of knowing how many of those came from the surrounding counties in the metropolitan statistical area? And what I'm getting at on that one is that as we move, it would help us to make the argument that this is a regional issue. It's not just a Charlottesville issue, and then we could move forward with in our summit with the county in the fall and make housing a priority. So that's kind of the method to my questioning.
And I'm sure we could
you
get
get
that data.
that data? And then all this great observation about community development needs, about transportation options needed, and infrastructure improvements needed, and the need for grocery stores and fresh food, the need for affordable quality daycare. Is that data somewhere for us to tap into?
Yes, it's just, this is a huge document.
Okay,
and
but it's there, so we can, because those are all policy implications.
Right.
Not for tonight, but I just said, wow, that's pretty amazing finding, and I just didn't know where the data was.
Right, and so you kind of brought some things to my attention, which that's why we go through the public comment period. And so information that we don't currently have in there, we still have time to include.
Great.
So,
and then the last thing, and I think you and I were both at this Section 3 workshop.
I wasn't there, but as a Section 3 coordinator,
And I remember you as a Section 3 coordinator. So what I remember hearing at that workshop, I think it was a couple months ago, was that the city had certain obligations to make sure that it could be an effective partner with the Housing Authority and any agency that got federal money, PHA. And is this the vehicle to tee that up, to make sure that we are on board with the Section 3 programming, or is there another vehicle for that?
well, I really think that would be a department head discussion, because my position is specifically geared towards the HUD funds that we receive, CDBG and home. But like in the email I stated, I'm here to provide technical assistance. The city and the Housing Authority approved a joint policy. So I think that was done when I was here in 2011. So I think that's the first step, is actually having a policy together. But as far as staff time dedicated towards assisting the Housing Authority or assisting any other grantee that receives funds that trigger Section 3, that would be a department head discussion, because my position specifically is to oversee CDBG and home and not any other. But where we can partner and I can provide technical assistance, I can do, but my specific responsibilities are specific to the CDBG and home, and where Section 3 is triggered from those specific
Okay.
projects.
Okay. Thank you.
And we've tried to work with the Housing Authority in the past. It was difficult with the previous ED. So I think if you want to partner, you have to make sure that the other partner is ready to partner and kind of understands what Section 3 is. Not saying that they don't. It's just, it has to be two willing parties. So I don't know if Alex would want to talk to Grant about an MOU or something like that, but I think that has to be worked at a
That has
higher
to be-
level. It's above my.
And we've had discussions about Section 3 before, especially in light of the fact that the Housing Authority is taking some significant steps to try to get to redevelopment. And we always said that we'd come back and have that discussion when they were ready for the next stages, because Section 3 is so important as part of that redevelopment process. So we are having some of those discussions.
And in the public housing section, there's information about the efforts that are currently going on with FAR and the Housing Authority. And so that's included in the planning document. That was information provided by FAR and provided by CRHA.
Okay, I just want to have for the record that I do think we need to really be on top of the Section 3 program. If we can get updates on that regularly to make sure that the Housing Authority and the city are crossing Ts and dotting Is, so that it's really going to be effective and that we're not going to get penalized by HUD.
So every year I have to submit a report to HUD. And honestly, with Section 3, the projects that we've had over the year, the only projects that trigger notification for Section 3 are the priority neighborhood projects. And these
Okay.
projects are about $100,000 to maybe almost $200,000. And so the threshold for the city is all projects that trigger construction contracts that are over $100,000. So what Section 3 says is that you have to provide notification, and you have to make sure that you're going through extra efforts to provide notification about these Section 3 opportunities. When and if contracts, there are Section 3 contracts that result from the projects, as well as job opportunities. So not every time. So really, Section 3 is not a job generating. If you don't have millions of dollars in CDBG funds, it's really not going to trigger employment, but it will trigger contracting opportunities. And so there's a mechanism in place when I was Section 3 coordinator to ensure that the city's complying. And each year we have to report to HUD on what the accomplishments are. But because our projects are not extensive and don't involve a lot of funding, they don't really trigger new hires. So a contractor already has people on staff to kind of carry out the project. And they do have Section 3 contracting opportunities, so that's when I have to make sure they're compliant, to make sure they're providing the extra notification, and usually it's me doing that. So we are complying with Section 3.
Okay.
It's just that I don't know that people understand that it's not really, when you don't receive a lot of funds, it doesn't really trigger job opportunities. Whereas with the Housing Authority and redevelopment, that's where jobs will be
and
triggered.
That sounds like it's more reality, or at least it's becoming more reality.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
One question that I had is in regards to, and I've been talking to Mayor Walker. Hello, Mayor Walker. She's watching. As she is feverishly letting us know different things that she wants to say. One question that she has is in regards to the housing for
accessibility.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
It's number 4. Ensure housing is accessible for all residents. That one.
Yeah, yes, thank you. The priority piece, one of the things that we're looking at in regards to when we say that making sure that affordable housing is accessible to all residents, it kind of leads to a position in which maybe the thought that doing for all will potentially be most beneficial for all people, and in fact, it may have an inverse effect. So is it possible for us to look at targeting a specific demographic if we're looking at maybe 50% and below AMI, because they're the ones who, in terms of the affordable housing structure, is hurting the most. And I know we've had the housing study that said that we need more higher income housing, and that may potentially alleviate some of the housing for middle and lower incomes. But is it possible for us to look at just specifically targeting and ensuring that we have affordable housing for everyone 50% AMI and below?
So in the document, so specifically I'm referring to some of the fair housing issues. So under the Fair Housing Act, you have protected classes, you have persons with disabilities, you have discrimination based upon religion. It just goes through a list of items. And so what came out in a lot of the consolidated plan meetings is that one, with CRHA, there's an issue, there's a priority for creating housing that's accessible, where if you have a disability, you're not trying to go up and down the stairs. And then also, when it says ensure housing is accessible for all residents, we're talking about persons with special needs as well as the aging population. So we can, revise that to kind of call out specific
target
categories.
Categories, yeah.
And I did hear, and you guys haven't seen, but it says affordable housing, homeless, non-homeless, and persons with special needs. But we can include more of a targeted, more folks in that targeted group. And then when council sets priorities, council can say, because I don't know that we can go to HUD and say we want to just target funding to the lower income people. But when council sets priorities, council can say there's a critical need to make housing accessible to folks in this category, and we would like the funds to prioritize people in that category.
So if council were to set a goal and we say that we want to specifically target and look at housing for individuals 50% AMI and below, that would then in turn affect the consolidated study, and that would be a way to, not saying we're getting around HUD, but that would be a way for us to be able to address
and it's not getting around HUD, it's just saying you all can set the priorities however you like, as long as it's consistent with the consolidated plan.
It's one of our goals.
It is a priority.
It's already a goal.
I just want to, we did discuss this particular issue, I think, on Friday or on Thursday, and what I would recommend is some kind of flexibility, because the federal, one of the objectives in the HUD entitlement program is low to moderate income, which is people between from 80% AMI down below.
Right.
So maybe staff can frame the goal in such a way that it's flexible, because if we don't have opportunity to provide, for instance, if there is a project, and we're going to put the money in the project, and the opportunity doesn't exist well, to target the resources to people, if the project is 50% for the 50%, and then the opportunity doesn't exist to do that, then we lose out in terms of considering people between 50 and 80% AMI. So we need to frame that particular goal so that there will be some kind of flexibility.
So even if we were able to frame it in which we have flexibility, I think your point is well taken in regards to the opportunity may not be there. And by opportunity, you mean maybe the land to build a structure or just the housing there in itself. But I still think we have to be targeted in specific in some regards to stating that this 50% AMI and below, because it's very different, in my personal opinion, between the 50% and 80%. So
it is.
If we can be targeted in stating that the 50% is indeed a group in which we want to ensure they have affordable housing, and yes, Ms. Galvin, it is a goal of ours. I know we've discussed it at great length, but being consistent in all of our documents will also bode well for us.
And I don't see an issue with revising the goal to say ensure housing is accessible for those with critical need. And then when council sets the priorities, they can specify, and then we can use a tool, our RFP tool, to kind of prioritize folks who are in the most need.
RFP being request for proposal tool?
Yes.
So I think multiple of us,
Okay.
I mean, this is the first we saw this document, but I agree. This morning I was when you read ensure housing accessible to all residents, I think we were thinking like all residents. Well, that's not where we should be focusing. I think that was just more.
And I guess I should have been more specific because CDBG funds target 0 to 80% AMI. And so I think there's no issue with revising that to what I just said.
Great. Thank you.
And I just have one just general process question. So you go through a lot of work to develop this, but obviously there's other community partners. Give me a sense for who's at the table from the other counties. And not necessarily their names, but just give me a sense for like, what is their involvement? Like, do they have a person that's like, you know, they have a you, each of those municipalities, and are they, you know, at all these same meetings and part of the development of this document?
So the home consortium is made up of the different counties. So the city is the grantee of the home funds, but the TJPDC administers the funds, and we're a home consortium. So that means we're made up of the different counties, City, Albemarle, Nelson, Fluvanna, Greene, and Louisa. And so all of these folks, the different foundations, meet monthly on a frequent basis, and they've had input on the plan, hands-on input when developing the plan, but they only receive home funds. So CDBG funds are specifically targeted to city residents, but they have been involved and at the table and are part authors of the action plan.
Right, and the group of you work together on the action plan for each of those municipalities.
Yes, so they provide their recommendations from their perspective, and then I come and say, here's the city's needs, here are the city's needs, and here's what we plan to do with the funds. And that's our way of collaborating, is by meeting monthly to discuss housing issues, and also like County of Albemarle, reaching out to them to provide data. They're also on the home consortium, but the different agencies and the different foundations from the different counties help author, in a sense, the consolidated plan by providing the data, because I don't know what the rural areas need, but they do, because they deal with them on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Public comment?
If there are additional questions, we'll open up for a public hearing.
My name is Brandon Collins.
Good evening, I'm Brandon Collins. I'm a city resident and I work for the Public Housing Association of Residents, which is the duly elected, duly recognized representative of public housing residents in Charlottesville. We appreciate Ms. Howard coming and meeting with our board as she was preparing the consolidated plan for you to look at. And I got to say, I haven't looked at all 190 some pages of the plan, but there were a couple things I wanted to make sure got in there, because we didn't get a chance to have this discussion with Ms. Howard. I'm hoping CRHA did. But it's vitally important that the consolidated plan is consistent with the Housing Authority's annual plan. In the past, that was very difficult because the consolidated plan in the past was not consistent with itself. On the surface, from what I'm seeing from this year, is that a lot of work has gone into making that consolidated plan much more consistent with itself in terms of the recommendations meeting some of the needs that are listed there. One of the things that really needs to be highlighted in that consolidated plan is the relocation on a big scale of public housing residents over the next few years as redevelopment moves forward. Like I said, I haven't read all 192 pages, but that may be a conversation that needs to happen before you pass the consolidated plan. On Section 3, my understanding from the workshop we attended was the recommendation was that the city actually should move towards having its own Section 3 policy that could be targeted in a different way from the Housing Authority's Section 3 policy, and I think that's a conversation that really needs to move forward. FAR's been working with the Housing Authority to develop a Section 3 policy and some programming to make it actually work and make it function for everybody. But I think that's a conversation that needs to be happening, and I think the city could do a whole lot more. I'm hesitant to encourage the idea of enforcement and compliance based on just the threshold. And the idea that, you know, it's not being triggered in the city. I think actually it potentially is, and I think it potentially will be as we take more of your money and put it towards Housing Authority and redevelopment. I would also support the idea of targeting this stuff in the consolidated plan to 30% AMI and below. or 50% AMI and below, as Mr. Bellamy suggested. It's such a small amount of money that comes from CDBG and home that, you really have to target that to the greatest need, and I think that's been identified as that extremely low. I don't think you need the kind of wiggle room in case you want to reach higher incomes that's going to benefit them. And then lastly, just want to point out on CDBG funding, that does not exclude Housing Authority, even though it gets its own HUD money. That money can be used for infrastructure for Housing Authority in those priority neighborhoods. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Collins.
Is there anybody else?
Thank you for reminding us, Mr. Collins, the Housing Authority will take more of our money. That was riveting.
Hi, I'm Kim Spalding. I live at 912 Ridge Street, and I'm part of the Ridge Street Community Neighborhood Program group. And so I was asked, and I appreciate all the reports that Tiara did. She did it for our group as well. And we had I think we had, 15, 20 people that came, including Heather. And so anyway, two areas that she brought up that were interesting to me is that Belmont's been waiting quite a while for their allocation, so we certainly want them to get it. And they only have like a small area of Belmont that actually qualifies for CCDBG, but I was also reminded that small allocation goes very quickly. Just one intersection can eat up $100,000. So Ridge Street, the entire Ridge Street Neighborhood Association does qualify for CCDBG. So we want to make sure that we do get what we can. So by doing something like what she suggested of 3 years, each one of us gets 3 years, but spread out over 6 years seems like a good idea. And the other thing is that before council decides exactly how everything's going to be allocated, it would be great if Ridge Street and Belmont could get together and pool their resources, their mental resources into figuring out what we want, and work with staff on that. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to talk about the 5-year consolidated plan or the annual action plan? All right. Close that public hearing. And we'll have discussion.
We've already discussed.
So we have 2 resolutions.
I'd like to make a motion. Oh.
Are you going to write the resolution, though? There's a big hole in it that we have to fill.
I thought.
So we have 2. We have the consolidated plan and
2.
annual action plan, and then we have the separate priority neighborhood funds. Is that right? Right.
Yeah. So we're just making a motion to approve the 5-year consolidated plan, right?
We had to determine how to allocate it between the 2 neighborhoods.
But I thought that was the second component of it.
So
There's
the
2.
first one is determining how, with the
first one's
action plan,
determined with that.
how
Okay,
to
excuse me.
allocate the funds, and then the final one is to approve the cons plan and the action.
In that order.
Sorry, so I was ahead of myself.
So we have this rotating and alternate funding for each neighborhood, and we're saying that instead of what's written in the memo was extend it for a 6-year time frame with 3 years each cycle, starting with Belmont, is what I'm hearing.
That's
That was
what
the
it says.
recommendation.
That's what it says on here.
There wasn't what?
On the resolution, there isn't a decision.
It's not.
There isn't anything on the resolution. So the staff memo had the exact language that you just gave to us? Because that didn't sound right.
So I.
So slightly
council-
different, you're right.
Council can, while making your motion, I would suggest or recommend that council alternate funding allocations between Belmont and Ridge Street each year, with Belmont being the first priority neighborhood. And then council can allocate the funds for 6 years to ensure that each neighborhood has 3 years of funding. So Belmont would be the priority neighborhood for the first year, and then the following year would be Ridge Street, and then the following year would be Belmont, and that would go out for 6 years, and then each priority neighborhood would have 3 years of funding. That was the recommendation.
Okay, so, all right.
It's different than what's in our memo.
Right.
Right.
I didn't put the language in there just because I didn't know what you
Different
all
options
were
to
going to
choose from.
decide.
Right. So. So it could be that the resolution could, I'm just going to try this out if I may. That be it resolved by the council that the funds for FY 18-19 be allocated as follows. The allocation shall alternate each year between Belmont and the Ridge Street neighborhoods, and that the allocation shall be extended for 6 years so that each neighborhood gets a total of 3 years of funding. Did you get that page?
Extended to 6 years.
Extended to 6 years.
Right, not for 6 years.
Correct. Or
Well, it could
for
be
6
four-
years,
for
a total
6
of
years.
6 years.
Right, total of 6 years. That's, yeah.
So that's the motion.
So that's the motion.
Yeah, that's the motion.
Is there a second?
So, second.
Discussion?
Oh, did I say that the Belmont would be the first year?
You did.
Yes.
I mean, the first neighborhood.
Oh, I'm sorry. One question. You said the Ridge Street neighborhoods. It's not the Ridge Street Neighborhood Association. It's just the neighborhoods.
Ridge Street neighborhood. There's a
Okay.
geography to
The
it.
geography. Okay. Just double checking.
So we have a first and a second.
Mm-hmm.
So we vote. I keep forgetting I'm in the other seat today. Motion passes 4-0. And then we have the second resolution.
Correct.
So we have a motion.
Yeah. Be it resolved, or excuse me, I move for the approval of the 2018-2022 Consolidated Plan and FY 2018 and 19 Annual Action Plan with the amendments that we discussed tonight during the meeting.
Which are making under 50% AMI priority.
Yes, making under 50% AMI priority.
And clarifying
And
that language.
Clarifying the language, yeah. But, Ms. Galvin, didn't you have something that you want to?
I'm blanking.
I thought you said.
There's section.
Oh, and to establish a city Section 3 policy.
Yeah.
We have a city Section 3 policy.
I'm getting confused then because we were hearing that we don't have a separate Section 3 policy.
We have a Section 3 policy, procedures, and process, and it's a joint CRHA and Section 3, CRHA and city policy, which means that it applies to the city.
Well, then maybe this is a separate conversation anyway.
It's a separate conversation. But we can bring that back to council.
I
for
would
review.
like to have that, because there clearly does seem to be a nuance here that I may be missing, but I'd like to probe it a little bit more. And I
Okay.
wonder if this is the place where we would put in the idea of that the Belmont and Ridge Street CDBG task forces shall meet together periodically
So that's a part of the citizen participation
Okay,
plan?
yes.
So that's a separate planning document?
Okay, that's a separate plan.
But it's-
That's not,
yeah.
that's
It's
not.
outlined in that.
Okay.
But we
Because
have it
just
on the
did
books.
seem that that was a very good idea.
Yeah, we have it on the books essentially.
Right.
Right.
Okay. Well, then it was just one.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Amendment to make it,
50%.
the 50% AMI and below.
And there's that minor verbiage that you've already kind of done anyway, so. All right, so we have a first, I'm sorry, we have a motion and a second.
Second.
Oh, this is what you have, Mike.
Oh, thank you.
All right. Motion passes 4-0. I think we'll take a break.
Thank you, Ms. Howard.
Thank you very much.
Let me just have